George, take one.
Take one. Take one way.
It felt like our hourglass was just standing still while the world was moving on.
And suddenly we were being held back by someone who clearly didn't believe in the project, and why did they have to?
I thought I couldn't write music anymore. I thought I couldn't write lyrics anymore.
What if this funny little project that we've always done, what if it doesn't work?
In case you need a catch-up, here's a history of Bears and Trees.
Iain and Callum met in primary school at the age of 5. Iain didn't want to be friends with Callum at first because Iain was scared that being friends with the new kid would threaten their already weak social cred. The friendship was inevitable. Iain met Nick at high school at the age of 11 and quickly bonded over their love of Fall Out Boy, and Iain hatched a genius plan to get Callum into emo music. It took time but was eventually successful. Callum and Iain decided to form a band with another of their childhood friends, but needed a guitarist. Nick lied about being able to play the guitar and was able to join the band immediately. Their music was described as not as shit as I thought it was going to be.
During college, last 2 years of high school for any non-British people, Callum went to learn music tech and met George. George tried to convince Callum to kick the drummer out of his current band and have George in. The drummer was Iain. When their other childhood friend decided to quit the band in November 2014, George was finally in, and Bears and Trees began. Together, the four of them created their first musical collection, Let's Sleep On It, in which they made up for a lack of talent with an overdose of angst. In 2015, they all spread to different parts of the country for university. They periodically came together to write and record little pieces reflecting their personal journeys through life, creating and releasing just 5 more minutes, bits and pieces, Fly Out to Alaska, and Sitting Pretty, and writing I See Blue in a sofa surfing fashion.
In September 2019, the band had finally moved back to Croydon and decided to start committing more time to their music. They played a show for the release of I See Blue and were surprised at even 50 people being in attendance. The team wrote and recorded their next project, I Want to Feel Chaotic, and were excited for all opportunities 2020 would bring. On January 1st, Bears in Trees released Ramblings of a Lunatic. Then, the rest of 2020 happened. Bears in Trees did everything they could to give people the escape they craved, released a song a month, and the world responded.
Whilst locked in their homes, Bears and Trees got signed to Counterintuitive Records and amassed a following they could only dream of in times past. In the gaps of lockdown, they quickly wrote, recorded and released Keep Me Safe and began writing and recording, and everybody else smiled back. Their debut tour got postponed and postponed, but with every postponement the venue sizes grew and grew across the country. And in summer 2021 they were playing their biggest shows ever, meeting hundreds of people across the country. More and more people were turning their heads to Bears and Trees. They released And Everybody Else Smiled Back, their debut studio album, and booked a tour ending in Electric Ballroom Camden with over 1,000 people attending. A band the music industry had never heard of was breaking through.
When I came off stage at the Electric Ballroom, I was just so hyper and just jumping around, couldn't contain myself. And we all went up to the dressing room, and management and crew and everyone were there, and it was just such it felt like a proper family.
It was kind of a blur. Felt to me more like the start of the band with like a capital B. A band people knew and a band people could see in their future for a long time.
Coming off that stage, I was like, oh, this is it. This is us becoming the biggest band in the world. I felt that. I came off the stage, I think it was actually Glasgow, and I literally looked at Nick and went, oh, I think this is it. This is the moment that they're going to make documentaries about.
I think there was a feeling that we can kind of, we got this, we can do it, you know? We've proven we can do it, we've proven a lot of people wrong by getting there and getting to that point.
We never grew up in a scene where we had mentors. Our peers were just also kind of just figuring it out. And so we were going in fairly green and fairly blind. And that really became apparent when we went to America for the first time, how green we really were.
The highs of touring were for sure going to America and having people sing your songs back in a different accent. That's that's crazy. It still feels crazy to hear. And that feeling never goes away. It still hasn't gone away when we've gone back to America. That's still what I'm most excited about when we get to play a show and when we get to perform for people.
My mind is playing awful tricks, the ramblings of a lunatic. Would anyone listen to this? I'm running from my emptiness. My brain is tired, my stomach's sick. The ramblings of a lunatic.
The lows are when you are being violently sick in like a Texas gas station. Like that sucks, that's really bad.
The You Me at 6 tour was not real until it actually happened. It was just something that we kind of thought, oh yeah, one day we'll get a big tour. And then it kind of came along and it's like, oh, okay, this is weird, but it'll happen, I guess. And we'd never played anything of that size, so we couldn't even picture it or imagine ourselves in that situation.
It felt like we went from not being able to play a show and not being able to play our instruments to suddenly having to learn how to play Ali Pali and do these insane venues in front of all these people. And you just do it. You just get on and you play and just hope you get better and better and better. I remember coming off at Ali Pali and all of us were like, no idea what happened. That 30 minutes just went, and now we've done it. We were so happy we've done it, but I don't think any of us really remember any moment from that set. We always kind of been told that we were special because we were underground, no one had heard of us, and we managed to sell out the Electric Ballroom, but no one in the industry had heard of us. And like that was a good thing, and we were a bit like, well, that wasn't on purpose. We did that because no one really cared, or no one said they cared.
Okay, crash course time. Who the hell is the music industry? Anyone who works in music? Here's some of what we've learned. In short, the music industry is a global network of record labels, press, management companies, booking and creative agencies who all work to create and promote the product we know as music. Us, Aaron Bay-Shook, Taylor Swift, and the guy who books bands at the Oval Pub in Croydon are all technically part of this web. Some are just deeper in the well than others. So let's break down each of those jobs. A creative is someone who creates stuff. Musicians are the primary example, but photographers, videographers, and producers are also a part of this group. Booking agents are the people that book shows and tours. Managers and management companies work for the creatives to organize their business long-term and connect the prior parts of the puzzle. Press are the people who promote music, namely radio pluggers and PR representatives. And then you have record labels. A record label is a company that has capital, and they use that capital to facilitate the creation and the distribution of a musical product in return for the bulk of the profits of that product. Back in the day, when it was difficult to make a record, they would hire the songwriters, the musicians, and the engineers. They may even own the studio a song was recorded in, and the place vinyl records were produced. However, as time has gone on, producing music has become more accessible. You don't need a label to write and record your own music at your house, post it online and have it seen by the world. So what's the point of a label anymore? Firstly, upfront costs. Whether they are people working with Taylor Swift or they're your mates, everyone deserves to get paid for their work. A record label will cover the majority of expenses invoked in recording and styling a record up front. Labels call the upfront costs they pay artists an advance. After the album is out, any money made goes back to the label until the advance is paid back. Once that's done, the label start taking a percentage of continued profit. As an example, when we signed to Counterintuitive, our split was 50-50, label and artist for 15 years. i.e. for every £1 those records make, CI get 50p and we get 50p. After those 15 years are up, we will own 100% of the records we release with Counterintuitive. For a massive artist on a major label, these advances can be worth millions of pounds. Not for us, but for some people. And that split can be as extreme as 85-15 in the label's favour, i.e. for every £1, the artist makes 15p and the label makes 85p, with the label owning that much of their music forever. Wow, that's such a bad deal. Why would you take that? Often the upfront costs of recording music will prohibit the artist from doing such without an advance. But also labels are big names in the industry. They will have sway with TV, radio, and even streaming platforms. They can provide PR teams and music video teams. They open doors. If you argue your case right, not only do you get paid for your art, but after getting those rights back, you've all secured a pension. If they don't see money in you, they may offer you just enough to make the record, but not enough for you to see any meaningful income yourself, and they may own your music forever. It's hard out here.
After the Electric Ballroom show, we're approached by two separate record labels. One is a smaller record label, one's a very big record label that's fronted by a management team that gives you, quote unquote, the experience of having a big label's support, but with a small label's community. Like,
It's super exciting to get approached by a label. I mean, we were signed to Counterintuitive, and we love Counterintuitive, we love Jake. He is one of the sweetest people we've had the pleasure of meeting, but we were aware that we had the opportunity to find someone who can maybe help us more in the UK, who was more tapped into the world we wanted to be in personally. And when we first started getting some like label recognition and some label attention, that was crazy. It felt like, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and we're going to be a major label band and we're going to be able to do whatever we want artistically because they're going to believe in us.
If I wanted to sign that immediately, as soon as we heard it, I was like, yes, let's make this work, let's do it. You know, you have this energy where you just want it to happen.
And we saw how little respect that we'd had from the industry previously, and we felt like, oh, now this is the moment where they've realised what they're missing. And the offers come through, and They're much more restrictive, much less supportive than we thought they were going to be.
And by the end of it, this amazing opportunity felt a bit more like a burden. It wasn't exciting, it wasn't helping us in create this amazing next project.
It doesn't feel representative of the work we've put in so far. It doesn't feel representative of what we can do. That was disappointing. I think the first blow was like, oh, okay, not everything always works out.
I guess there's always that fear of making a wrong decision, and that's a massive pressure when you're trying to enjoy all these things.
It felt like signing to a major label would be an acceptance of, oh, this is real, we're a real band now. There was so long where we were just sat waiting for meetings which didn't happen and waiting for phone calls that never happened. And it was tough because a year and a half ago, we made all our own decisions and we did everything ourselves. And if we wanted to release music, we recorded it and we released it. And suddenly we were kind of being held back by someone who clearly didn't believe in the project. And why did they have to? I guess what we learned about that when you're signing with one of the biggest record labels in the UK is that there are so many people involved in that decision making, and all it needs is one person with some control to not support the project or understand in the project. And they can drag it out for months while you're sat on hooks.
February 2023, we were doing this You Me at 6 tour. We're playing Alexandra Palace, it's amazing. We're just presenting our music to so many people, and we wanted to have a record to come out after that so that people saw us and went, wow, and then they got lost in this world that we could provide them. And that just couldn't happen because we just kept being strung along by someone who really didn't care.
I don't know if our fans felt the same kind of stagnation we did, but to me it became palpable in our community very quickly. That's what I rely on as my barometer and like what gives me the reason to do this and be here.
If we commit to this, there's a chance that this will all go perfectly and everything will work out and we can keep doing this for at least another 5-10 years. There's always that worry in the back of your mind. You don't want to make that wrong decision.
You are the only person who has the stakes in your project, which you do. No one can or will ever be able to care about your project as much as you do.
I'd kind of given up on the idea of the label, but what was potentially the option, which we never were actually offered, was so good that the imagined future that had was so enticing that you couldn't just turn it down. Oh my goodness, now we have to create something to present to a record label so that they go, oh yeah, let's sell this. You're asking yourself, why am I making anything? And when you're asking yourself, why am I making anything, how can you make anything?
Was there a breakthrough moment?
When we said no, like that was it, we weren't going to do it. I think the relief of that was crazy. To be like, okay, fine, let's take control. And I think it did spur us on to go like, let's do this. Let's now make the best album we can possibly make.
So let's take this back and kind of do it how we want to do it. No one else knows what we want to do as much as we know.
So, we said no. We decided that putting our creativity first was more important. If they didn't care enough to make us a priority, that was a good sign we weren't going to find that security in the long term. After talking amongst ourselves and other bands we'd met along the way, we decided to make it work completely independently and be the sole owners of our music. But it wasn't clear skies yet. After spending a year trying to secure a record deal, trying to find security in our business, and not being certain about the future of our project, we still weren't stable. Far from it. After feeling stagnant and strung along, the next thing had to be the most important record yet. It had to be something that proved the label executives wrong. It had to mean something. But we didn't know what we wanted to say anymore. What was our voice? What was there to write about?
I can't remember how many songs we started writing and scrapped because they weren't going. We've never had issues writing like we did to get to this album.
To get back into the flow of kind of us being us and doing what we do, which is writing songs, playing music together. It took us a very long time to know how to write songs again.
Like me and Iain were talking about what do we have to write about, what do we care about saying anymore. We said what we wanted to say with And Everybody Else on My Back. We said what we wanted to say with the next EP, Every Moonbeam, Every Fever Dream. From then it's like, do we have anything to say anymore? Like, what are we trying to talk about?
I was literally just trying to write songs that were, 10-step way of feeling more content in your life. And it didn't feel real or like I was actually talking about my lived experience. I was talking about an imagined way of processing imagined pain. I shouldn't be articulating theory or psychological textbooks or whatever. I should be talking about the kind of confusion I feel right now as a human being.
Yeah, for this album we went away. I can't even remember what part of the world we went to now.
Airbnb in Sussex and wrote. And I think that was what we needed. We needed the moment, just the four of us, no other distractions, not being somewhere we'd been before. We suddenly were like, okay, this is how we do it. This is what it felt like back when we were writing stuff before. We're finally getting stuff, and it's actually working.
It was like a converted barn house, and it was like super stripped down, super basic, and we just, I don't know, something just clicked. As someone who had struggled to write lyrics and pen anything that I cared about up until that moment, I spent like an evening while those guys were chilling out. I was like super frustrated because I hadn't written anything I was proud of. I came down and I showed him Hot Chocolate, and I showed him We Don't Speak Anymore, which are now 2 singles from the album. And that felt really good because I was like, oh, like I do have stuff I want to talk about. I have stuff that matters to me still. I have moments I want to write about, and I have ways I want to write about and things I want to say. And these guys get it, and they know how to make it better. It's like we'd forgotten how to bring the best out of each other until that moment. And all of a sudden we were doing it again like we had done for the last album, and it felt pretty good.
Okay, let's just stop trying to think of a theme, stop trying to think of a concrete idea that we're basing all of this on. Let's just go back to basics. We went away, write about your current human lived experience. And so that's what we did, and suddenly everything started just slotting together. The lyrics then led to music, and music then led to lyrics, and it felt like we'd all kind of let go of a lot of tension that we were holding for a very long time. Not just, you know, about life, but about the band and about kind of each other. You know, when you go through what we were talking about before about the label being dragged on and discontent within what we want and what we should do and what next steps should be when everything's so unclear, at least there's tension. It felt like this tension just suddenly melted away. And we felt like we were just 4 friends in a room making music about a lived experience again.
Okay, so the record is written, but how do we make it? We wanted this to be the greatest thing we've ever made, but we didn't have the funding to make it happen. That's when Sandbag stepped in. Sandbag are a merchandise company. They're like Callum's Bedroom, but more professional. They looked at our merch and what we were doing and said they'd help pay for the record. They gave us an advance and we can pay it back from our old merch sales. The difference between this and the record label is we would own 100% of our music. We took that deal and we spent it on going away to a recording studio called Vader. This is a residential studio where we were able to live and breathe our record for 2 weeks straight. And we worked with our self-described creative engineer, George Perks, or GP to avoid confusion with George Berry. It was starting to happen. We were making the record.
I listen back to the demos now, and the song is there, right? Like, the core is there, but they sound so trashy compared to how the songs sound now. And I listen to them and I'm like, how could anybody like see anything in these? Like, I guess we kind of got what we wanted to sound like, but GP heard them and he got them instantly, and he was like connecting to the melodies, he was connecting to the lyrics, he was suggesting ideas, suggesting changes that we hadn't thought of.
With our very old stuff, I would record it and mix it, and I would kind of see it from start to end. And there was something exciting about being able to hand it over to someone else to do more than I was capable.
When we were with GP, it felt like he got it immediately. I love this bit, I noticed this, and just made those little things and just said little comments, little things that we'd probably all been thinking but hadn't quite found the words to say them. GP felt like a 5th member. He needed to produce the album.
George Perks just was able to, he would just say things and be like, oh yeah, that's it. And he would say, I'd like to change this bit, and we were like, whoa. He just kind of knew, and there was always this little bit of resistance because it's like, no, you can't, you're not the person to change this music, this is mine, but then like, it wasn't like, we have to do this. It was like, I think I would like this moment here, I'd like this moment here, that you just couldn't not at least try it.
To give that creative control away actually didn't feel so difficult, I think, because we trusted GP so much, because we knew that he understood the concept and he understood the album and he understood the band and the music, that it was so refreshing to give that creative control away because it meant we didn't have to think about it.
When you're at Vader, you live and breathe it for 2 weeks, which drives you insane. It's an interesting experience. It was tough in different ways that we never thought we'd struggle with, but it was just massively inspiring to just constantly be surrounded by this music and constantly like living and breathing it. In the space of a year, we went from not being sure about whether the band was going to last another 6 months to creating what we believe is the greatest thing any of us have ever made. And whilst there has been, still is, and will be struggle, we are so proud of this record, and we have one of the most incredible communities who can't wait to hear it. No matter how well the album does commercially, no matter if the record labels agree that this album worked, it is already successful. We are so grateful for the ride we've been gifted and our community who have supported us the whole way through.
I want people to hear it and feel a sense of joy at the absurdity of existence, to feel the release of tension that we felt when we were creating it.
Oh, we did it. We actually did it. These are a reflection of not just what we did in those 2 weeks, but the whole 2 years basically leading up have been reflected in this music, and that felt pretty good.
I want people to hear it and not go, wow, this is a great Bears and Trees album. I want people to hear it and go, wow, this is a great album. But I also want people to say this is the most authentically Bears and Trees album that I've ever heard.
I just hope this album is heard by the people who want to hear it and they like it.
I want people to hear it and feel like it's okay to not know what's going on in their lives, because no one does.
And it felt like one entire project that we'd put our entire selves into.
You can teach a man to fish, but you can't teach a fish to man. That's all for tonight, folks.